Dude, so much has happened, and it seemed like right after our episode, like that next day where it came out, so many people signed.
Yeah. So I thought what we could do today is just kind of go through and like give our opinions on some of the bigger free agent signings or the smaller ones, basically, like whichever ones we feel like talking about. We'll get to all the signings eventually, like in the context of the team previews. I was thinking we could just be on a schedule. There are 4 weeks until the NBA season starts, and so I think we can do like 8 episodes between now and then, 2 a week.
Awesome.
And we can basically just go through 6 preview episodes where we like preview 5 teams each episode, and then we can do this podcast right now, and then we can do one final like predictions show before the season starts.
Yeah, that sounds freaking sick. Predictions wise, you want to just go what the outlook is in terms of how deep they'll make it in the playoffs, or
just like give our predictions for like you were saying, the playoff teams, predict the awards, like all NBA teams, stuff like that. Just
that'll be fun.
Stuff. Yeah.
That'll be very, I think I'm interested to see, I think Stephen Curry's getting interviewed tonight by like Scott Van Pelt regarding
Sports Center at night, maybe.
Yeah. Nice. About Klay Thompson, which is so sad.
Yeah.
But yeah. So which guy do you want to start with?
All right. So I guess the natural guy to start with would be the man who up to this point's been paid the most so far, and that's Gordon Hayward with the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Locking him up for 4 years, $120 million, making $30 million annually. And they still haven't quite figured out how they're going to structure this yet. As of now, it looks like they're going to waive and stretch Batum and bring in Hayward that way, which I think would be a mistake. But there's still the possibility of like a sign and trade or other mechanisms to bring Hayward to Charlotte. But I thought I didn't love this move for Charlotte, to be completely honest. Yeah, because first of all, from a asset allocation standpoint, I don't think Gordon Hayward is worth $30 million. And granted, I don't think it's a massive overpay. Like in this league, especially with wings being so valuable, especially wings with diversified skill sets like Gordon Hayward. I think that's the archetype of player you want to invest in. But with where the Hornets are right now on sort of the franchise trajectory, obviously you've got LaMelo Ball coming in, which I thought was an amazing pickup at number 3. I thought like that automatically made the draft a win for the Hornets, getting Ball at 3. But then you've also got Miles Bridges, PJ Washington, Devontae Graham is in his 3rd year. Granted, he's a little old for a guy who's in his 3rd year, but still that's a pretty young nucleus.
You still got Terry too, right? Or did they deal him?
No, they've still got Terry Rozier, and that's another contract where he may be slightly overpaid. But I just kind of thought, like, the Hornets, I still don't have them. I still don't think they're going to be great this year. I've yet to kind of think too deeply about any of the teams this year, but I don't think the Hornets will be cracking the top 8. And I just didn't really see what the value was of bringing in Gordon Hayward, especially when the opportunity cost is likely a shot at one of the top picks in the 2021 draft, which I haven't scouted yet, but it's supposed to be a pretty good draft.
Okay. Yeah, dude, Gordon Hayward, he has the potential to maybe have big numbers this year if he can stay healthy or on the court.
Right.
He'll probably be the guy for the most part.
Yeah, you would think so. At least a secondary / tertiary creator. I'm going to be very interested to see how they structure the rotations in Charlotte, how James Borrego sort of chooses to allocate the minutes, because between Graham, Rozier, Gordon Hayward, and now LaMelo Ball, those are 4 guys who like to play with the ball in their hands. 4 guys who can run a pick and roll. Maybe Terry Rozier is slightly less so, more of a score for himself kind of guy. But they definitely have a lot of creation on that team, and it's going to be interesting to see like who gets the most, who eats the most on that team. Yeah, who gets the most touches, who's creating offense in the last minute of a competitive game. It's just an interesting dynamic now in Charlotte.
I honestly, you've got to think that LaMelo is probably going to be taking the most like he's probably going to be touching the ball a lot no matter what. Because I don't think him coming into the NBA, he obviously has already been professional. I mean, I don't think the NBA, like he was doing his interview or whatever, and people were asking him, how are you going to adjust into being in the NBA? It's like he's been in the spotlight his entire life. And like this is just, I mean, besides a little bit of a talent upgrade, he's basically just going to fit right in, I think, and do good things immediately for them. I think so. Because he's been playing freaking professionals like overseas. And I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's not going to be a big deal for him. Yeah. He's going to touch the ball a ton.
I kind of agree and sort of disagree with what you're saying. The part I agree with is that I think it's going to be an important thing for Charlotte to give LaMelo Ball a lot of touches in the early going, because I think he is the future of the franchise, or at least they should hope that he is. Right now, I think he's the player on their roster with the highest upside. I think I was even a little bit higher on LaMelo Ball than most like scouts and draft experts going into the draft. And so I thought it was a coup for Charlotte to get him at number 3. I think there will be a bit of a learning curve for him. I mean, like, there are very few point guards who come into the NBA and are able to make all the reads and be able to like compute the game at a high level immediately. Like Luka Doncic is an example of one. John Morant was another one last year. And so I feel like we've kind of been taking these guys for granted just because we've got 2 in a row. And usually there's a bigger learning curve for rookies. And I think LaMelo Ball still has a lot of holes in his game. So I think he's going to be pretty bad his first year. But I still think they've got to kind of ride it out with him, which was one of the reasons I didn't like the Hayward signing. Because if you're going to like kind of ride it out and just sort of get the reps in for a young player, you might as well reap the reward of a high draft pick at the end.
I can definitely see some, like when you watch LaMelo, does he make like careless mistakes? I feel like.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because that's what he just seems very free. Yeah. Which is good and bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have that confidence.
Yeah, he could miss 100 shots and he'll still want the ball to take a game winner.
Exactly. And I think when he's not able to play to the full like limits of his imagination, I think he gets a little like almost bored and careless. Like he loves kind of making the flashy play and like the crazy like bounce pass assist through traffic. But a lot of the NBA is just like oftentimes like knowing like when to kick it out to the wide open shooter in the corner, knowing when to hit the roll man, and like kind of just doing the simple things. And I do think he has a tremendous feel for the game, but I just think he's going to have to like consistently learn how to read an NBA defense, which I think will come easily to him because from like what I can watch on film and stuff, he has a great mind for the game, but that's just something that all rookie point guards have to go through. Before we move on to the next free agent signing that we'll talk about, I just kind of wanted to mention a few salary cap logistics of the Gordon Hayward thing that I was kind of confused by. The first was the decision that I already kind of touched on, that they'll create the space for signing Gordon Hayward by waiving and stretching Nick Batum. And I think this is kind of the icing on the cake in terms of my overall disappointment with this transaction for the Charlotte Hornets. Because by stretching Batum, the way a stretch works in the NBA is that you can either just waive a guy and have him like not be on your team that year and just pay him the salary that you would have otherwise. But usually what NBA teams do is called a waive and stretch, which is basically where you multiply the years left on a guy's contract by 2 and then add 1 additional year and divide their salary out over those years. So Nick Batum, for instance, was going to get paid $27 million this year, and this was the last year of his contract. So multiply 1 year left on his contract by 2 plus 1. That's 3. Divide $27 million by 3, and they're going to be paying him $9 million for the next 3 years. So functionally, they're paying, even though Gordon Hayward's only getting paid $30 million a year, they're paying $39 million to have Gordon Hayward on their team, if that makes sense, which I think is a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. That's an interesting. I had no idea. So that's kind of cool. Yeah. I mean, obviously, probably
it's an interesting mechanism to be able to free up space, but I think teams abuse it oftentimes, and I think this is a prime example of that. The last Gordon Hayward related topic I wanted to touch on is just like sort of the other teams he was considering, which first and foremost was the one I predicted in our predictions video, the Indiana Pacers, who seems to be gaining a lot of traction to Gordon Hayward in the first day of free agency, to the point where there was even like trade buzz going around, and there was like being reported that Boston and Indiana were like negotiating the terms of the sign and trade. And basically the way that was going, Indiana was going to pay Gordon Hayward between 100 and 110 million. We don't know the exact figures. And Gordon Hayward was ready to accept that offer. Like, he was ready to go to Indiana. He wanted to be a Pacer. And in order to make that happen, Boston was going to have to agree to a sign and trade, which is basically Indiana didn't have enough cap space to bring Gordon Hayward in. And so instead of signing him with cap space, Boston was going to have to sign him and immediately trade him to Indiana, because Boston can re-sign Gordon Hayward using bird rights. And so what Indiana wanted to do was send Boston Miles Turner and Doug McDermott, but Boston wanted Miles Turner and one of either TJ Warren or Victor Oladipo, and they could never really get on the same page. And
there's no way they'd give up Oladipo.
Yeah, I don't really know what ended up happening. Like, like at first I thought Charlotte swooped in with an offer, and Gordon Hayward just committed to Charlotte, and that's what put an end to the whole Indiana-Boston negotiations. But the reporting after and just kind of reading the tea leaves, it sounds like Boston was never able to agree. And I can understand like Danny Ainge wanting to come out and ask for TJ Warren or Victor Oladipo. Like, you might as well do that. But if he really turned down Miles Turner and Doug McDermott, like, wow, like, what a disaster. I mean, Miles is a guy that would have really helped the Celtics team, and still a young guy, cost control. Well, not cost controlled, but they would have had his bird rights. Doug McDermott, like, you're not getting TJ Warren or Victor Oladipo. I would have actually given up Victor Oladipo if I was Indiana, even though the sticker shock on that might be a little high. But I think McDermott, Boston needs shooting on the bench, and McDermott certainly would have provided that. But yeah, what a disaster. Yeah, what a disaster for Boston.
Yeah, but we still don't know 100% though. Right?
No, we don't know 100% what the events were, but it certainly seems like if Boston wanted to pull the trigger on that sign and trade, they could have, and
dang,
that's definitely what I would have done. So do you want to move on to Boston now?
Sure, yeah.
So Boston was able to, they had no way of replacing Gordon Hayward. They could have brought him back with bird rights, but they had no cap space, no avenue to bring in another sort of starting caliber wing. So instead, they shifted their focus to a center, and they were able to sign Tristan Thompson for the mid-level, 2 years, $19 million. And then they used either the biannual exception or the minimum. I think it was the minimum, to bring in Jeff Teague from Atlanta. And those were kind of their two biggest signings.
Interesting.
Of free agency. And then obviously Aaron Nesmith and Peyton Pritchard from the draft are going to be the other two guys we see playing for the Celtics this year.
You think Jeff Teague's a upgrade from Brad?
No, I don't think so. Okay. I kind of like Brad Wanamaker a little bit better at this point, especially on defense. I just kind of wanted to talk about the center for the Celtics. And I just think this, like I said, was a disaster. I think Danny Ainge completely mismanaged this, because what you end up with is Tristan Thompson making $9.5 million a year. And when you think about it, 3 hours before free agency opened, they traded Enes Kanter, making $5 million to Portland. Like, you think Enes Kanter on a $5 million contract, you think they'd want that back now? I mean, yeah, they could have had Miles Turner for.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. If you could have Miles Turner, dude.
And they ended up with Tristan Thompson for $9.5. I don't even think Tristan Thompson's better than Enes Kanter. He has a few specific skills, which are probably more valuable to Boston's defensive concepts, as opposed to Enes Kanter being a one-dimensional, probably well below average defender. So, I mean, I can kind of understand if you like Tristan Thompson better in that scheme than Enes Kanter, but for $4 million more and for 1 year longer, I just think this is a bit of a mess for Boston. I think they'll certainly be worse than they were last year, barring any major improvements from one of either Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum. That's for sure.
Yeah. What else does their roster look like? They've got Marcus.
Yep. So basically, if we just run through the roster, point guard is Kemba Walker, Jeff Teague, Peyton Pritchard. Shooting guard, you've got Marcus Smart and Aaron Nesmith and Romeo Langford. Forwards, Jason Tatum. You've got Grant Williams, Semi Ojeleye.
What about Jaylen?
Yeah, Jaylen Brown. Yeah. And then centers, you've got Tice, Robert Williams, Tristan Thompson. So there's still going to be a good team. There's still going to be top 4 in the East. I just kind of think they can't help but think.
Bro, you put you put Miles Turner at the 5 with Kemba, Jaylen and Tatum, and then Marcus. That's a good lineup.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's a nice lineup.
I would have sprinted to the phone to agree to that trade if I was Danny Ainge.
Yeah, and also, like you were saying, Doug McDermott, he's a big guy that can shoot, and it seems like that's their bread and butter. That's what they look for. So that's interesting that they wouldn't hop on that.
Yeah, especially like if you play him instead of Semi Ojeleye, you get a lot of Semi Ojeleye's best traits in Grant Williams, and so I think it might be nice to have at least one shooting specialist next to those guys, which I mean, hopefully Aaron Nesmith can step up and fill that role right away. But Doug McDermott, I think, would have been a nice guy for them to at least have on their bench.
Facts, yeah. I still think that as long as you got Tatum and Brown, you got a shot. And Marcus Smart's, he's scrappy, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. This is still going to be a very good team.
Yeah. But who knows I don't know. I'm really interested to see what Peyton Pritchard does. Because I think he honestly could be decent, dude. I don't know.
I would love to see him take the backup point guard role from Jeff Teague before the end of the year.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember Jeff Teague was kind of a stud, but he's always just kind of been.
Yeah, he's a little bit aging out of his time right now. Where do you want to hit next?
Do you want to talk about Marc Gasol?
Sure, let's do it. Let's talk about
the Lakers.
Yeah, let's talk about the Lakers. For this one, I think it'll be kind of helpful to go in chronological order just of the offseason. Yeah. We already gave our opinions on the Danny Green, Dennis Schroeder trade, and for me, nothing really has changed. I thought Danny Green is an important player for them, especially in the playoffs. I think Danny Green is a valuable player. I think Dennis Schroeder will help them in the regular season, but I probably would have not have made that trade if I were the Lakers, although I can understand why they did it. I certainly wouldn't have done it in the same format that the Lakers did. There were a lot of things I would have changed about that, even if I could agree that Dennis Schroeder makes sense from. The next thing they did was sign Wesley Matthews, which I think if you're going and they used the biannual exception. Sorry, I should have just let off with that. They're going to pay him $3.6 million for this year. And it is a 1-year contract, which I think if you're going bargain hunting for a Danny Green replacement, Wesley Matthews is about as good as you're going to get. I think it's kind of a misconception. Like, people remember the Wesley Matthews from his earlier career, like in Portland. And like, he's not that guy at all anymore. Like, I don't even think he's fast enough to guard most twos, which is something Danny Green was able to do. Danny Green can pretty much guard any position 1 through 3. Wesley Matthews, I think, is strictly a small forward in terms of defense. Like, he's very strong. You're not going to be able to post him up or get by him, but him defending in space is not something that is a win for the Lakers at this point in his career. And he can shoot the ball a little bit. Like, I like the signing a lot for him. I think he's a guy who's going to be able to hold up in the playoffs, and getting that on your roster for less than $4 million, I'd say a big win.
Yep.
The one that really had me scratching my head was using the mid-level exception, 2 years, $19 million on Montrezl Harrell.
I was so shocked to see that.
Yeah.
So shocked to see that.
First of all, shocking from Montrezl Harrell's perspective. I guess his market just kind of evaporated after that terrible performance in the bubble, which I would be more inclined to blame that on injury.
The circumstances?
Yeah, on the circumstances, exactly. But yeah, whatever it was, his offers just never materialized. And you've got to think like he's a member of like the Clutch Sports Agency, which basically runs the Lakers at this point. I mean, LeBron's their biggest client. So maybe you want to think that's part of it. It probably did play a role. For me, it was just a basketball fit. Like, I did not like this signing whatsoever for the Lakers. Basically, like, to like set some context for this, like just less than an hour, maybe like just over an hour before the signing occurred, Dwight Howard was like officially announced to be going on a minimum contract to the Philadelphia 76ers. And so all of a sudden that left a bit of a hole for the Lakers at center. And before I sort of like go into my little monologue about how I think Montrez fits on the Lakers, I just kind of want to set a few principles to sort of establish a universe for this opinion to exist in. And the first thing is that I think Anthony Davis's natural position is a center. I think he has most of his offensive skills I would associate with the center position. On defense, like he can guard fives. And so I think like when the Lakers are playing their best basketball in high leverage situations, their best lineups have Davis at the five, which is something Frank Vogel went to in the finals against the Miami Heat, and even at certain points against the Nuggets, although not as much. And the second principle I wanted to establish is just that Anthony Davis will spend most of his time at the power forward. Like, Anthony Davis likes to be able to play on the perimeter. He likes to be able to shoot jump shots. He doesn't like to have to go through the grind of banging with 7-footers, like 240-pound guys every night. Like, that's just not something Anthony Davis is going to do on a consistent basis. And for that reason, the Lakers do have to have a center. I just did not understand the fit of Montrezl Harrell, though. Like, to me, like, they obviously wanted to get a guy to fill the Dwight void after Dwight had left. And I think the theory with Dwight always was, like, sure, you're sacrificing spacing on offense. Like, sure, you're not going to have as much shooting on the floor as you'd like, but it's worth it because on defense, you're so big and you've got so much size and so much rim protection, and people just aren't going to be able to score on you. To me, Montrezl Harrell brings all the spacing issues on offense, and he's not a good defensive center. Like, he's not a rim protector. He's certainly not as good of a rim protector as Anthony Davis. He's not a versatile defender. I just don't really think he makes sense on either end of the floor. I think he'll be a great fit with Dennis Schroeder playing pick and roll on the second unit. But yeah, this one just kind of left me shaking my head. Like, you're going to use your most valuable spending power on a guy who might be a good backup center during the regular season. Like,
what about they still got JaVale, right?
No, they traded him to Cleveland to make room for Marc Gasol.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think, I don't know what you said. I obviously don't know as much as you, but yeah, I don't know, like, minutes wise, it's going to be interesting, especially if you already had like your eyes on Marc Gasol. Cause I mean, Anthony Davis is kind of your bell cow, you know what I mean? So it's going to be interesting because like you said, they spent a lot, like a decent amount of money on a guy that might not be the best fit and might not even, I mean, depending on how it works, it could be a bust, and who knows if he'll actually play a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm sure he'll play a lot during the regular season, but like, to your point, like, we did see him kind of, or at least we saw him what should have been him getting played off the floor against the Nuggets. Like, now Doc Rivers chose to play him for reasons that were beyond me, but yeah, he was terrible in that series. And I thought what really saved the Lakers offseason this year was them being able to get Marc Gasol on a
Yeah.
2-year minimum deal with the player option on the second year. And I should have said this before, but just a little housekeeping. Montrezl Harrell, his second year is a player option as well. So theoretically, he could be back on the market in 2021. But Marc Gasol makes a lot more sense with this Lakers group because unlike Montrezl Harrell, he does have the physical capabilities to defend all of the strongest, biggest fives in the league. And I think this especially makes sense if you're looking forward to a playoff series against Denver. Like, who would you rather have going against Gasol, or who would you rather have going against Jokic than Marc Gasol? Like, maybe Joel Embiid, maybe Bam Adebayo, maybe Anthony Davis, but Marc Gasol is right up there for sure. Like, even if you're playing Portland, then you've got to have someone to match up with Yusuf Nurkic. Like, Marc Gasol, I think, will help him a lot in those regards.
Solid backup for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I would probably start him even. And
yes, but if you put Anthony at power.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and then.
But who's backup to the backup? Oh, I guess you have Montrez. Never mind. Duh.
Yeah. But then anyway, like a little bit more versatile on offense than Montrez, can shoot, can pass. Not the rim runner Montrez is, but Anthony Davis can do that with the starting units. Theoretically, LeBron's on the floor. And so I just think Gasol makes a lot of sense with this Lakers starting unit. Bringing back Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, they got him 3 years, $40 million. Pope's market kind of did not appear in the way I think a lot of us anticipated. He kind of withered on the line and eventually came back to the Lakers, hat in hand for his 3 years, $40 million, which I didn't think the Lakers could afford to lose him. So I thought that was an absolutely massive result for them getting Kentavious Caldwell-Pope back. Losing Caldwell-Pope and Green in the same offseason would have been like damn near a death blow to the Lakers. But having Pope back, you like their team a lot more going into next year.
Where's Danny at now?
He's in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay.
He got traded for Al Horford and a future first.
Hey, dude, Philadelphia actually, I mean, the roster is low-key kind of nice. Danny Green's good.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah. So they've got Benny, and then they've got the process. Now they got Dwight.
Yep, they've got Dwight Howard, Seth Curry. They've still got Tobias Harris.
Yeah.
Matisse Thybulle off the bench. Tyrese Maxey, they just drafted him. They've still got Shake Milton. I'm sure we're forgetting some guys. Mike Scott.
Dang, yeah. They're still looking kind of nice.
Yeah, I think so too. I think they're a top 4 team in the East. I think the top 4 teams in the East right now, I'm going to have to think about this more. So this is not by any means my final prediction, but Milwaukee, Brooklyn, Boston, and Philadelphia are all looking really good right now, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
What team do you want to move on to next?
I don't really care. Do you want to talk about Brad Wanamaker's addition really fast to the Warriors?
Let's just talk about the Warriors offseason from a holistic perspective. A lot of people have been saying the Golden State Warriors are losing the offseason. And I mean,
but like it's not a fair point, because like when you lose one of the best players in the league, obviously that's going to be detrimental to your team. Yeah, but like besides that, I feel like the moves that they've made have been fairly decent.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, when you pick James Wiseman at number 2.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just talking about teams who my expectation for them has dipped the most in the past 2 weeks, then obviously Golden State's near the top of that list, if not the number 1 team. But I think they did a tremendous job at making good decisions in terms of just like everything that was within their control. Mm-hmm. And what's really impressed me too is just Joe Lacob giving Bob Myers and the Warriors front office the freedom to spend as much as they want. Like, this Warriors team is going to be the most expensive team in NBA history. And I just you got to respect that kind of commitment to win. Mm-hmm. So,
he wants to win now.
Yeah.
So did you ever read up on it? It was mostly the owner, Lacob. He basically was the driving force for getting Oubre, right?
Yeah, or at least he gave him the green light to go out and pursue Oubre, which, I thought that was a great pickup. Yeah, I thought that was about as good as they can do. Because
yeah, it's about as good as you could do.
like I think this Warriors team is going to be, at least the starting unit, insanely fun to watch this year.
Right, I agree.
You've got Steph, Kelly Oubre, James Wiseman, Andrew Wiggins. These guys are going to be sprinting up and down the floor, getting a lot in transition. I think we're going to see a lot of lobs to Kelly Oubre from Steph Curry on the fast break.
We're going to see a lot of lobs to Marquise Chris, dude. Yeah, Marquise Chris got a little underrated. He can throw it down.
Going to be a fast-paced, like high-octane offense. I think they made some good moves on the fringes too, like Brad Wanamaker for $3.5 million. Just a great pickup there. They used part of their mid-level exception for that.
Upgrade from Kai Bowman.
Yeah, absolutely. Bringing in Kent Bazemore. I like that a lot.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I just saw that.
Yeah, I think
coming back to the Bay.
Yeah, and I like him a lot on this team. I think he was miserable in Portland and then started to rebound and play a lot better once he got traded to Sacramento. But I think his combination of like, he's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none on offense. Like he can shoot a little bit, he can put the ball on the floor, he can pass, but he's not really exceptional at all of those things. And while I think his days as one of the better like on-ball wing defenders are over, he's still good in a team construct, which is very important for this Warriors team. The Warriors, they're a team who I've been thinking about quite a bit the past few days, just because I'm so interested to see like what they're going to look like. And we have no idea. We've never seen this team before. And so I'm just kind of fascinated. One of the things that I'm sort of still trying to wrap my head around is just sort of the theory of this offense. Like we're so used to seeing the Warriors being like such a highly intelligent offense with so much movement, cutting a bunch of guys that can shoot. But really, Steph Curry is the only above average shooter on the team this year. And Steph Curry and Draymond are really the only two players who I would classify as having high feel for the game. And we're going to have to like see if Draymond can even be on the court during the regular season this year. Like last year, he was just miserable. And so I think this is going to be a completely...
Well, he was miserable coaching a G League team.
Yeah, but I think this is just going to be a completely different look for the Warriors offense. Like they don't really have players with the tools to run what they would have ran like during the title years. Like Steve Kerr is going to have to come up with a different thesis for this team.
I think that's a fun new challenge. And also I for some reason, I think it would be fun having Draymond taking it up the court, giving it to Oubre, letting him work. Like, especially it just gives Steph a rest. But I wanted to tell you, so I was like doing Christmas shopping or whatever. And have you ever heard of this brand called like Playbook Products?
No.
Okay. You would love it. I caught my dad a sick mask and it has like the X's and O's of some of the greatest plays in like a franchise's history. And so like, they're like black and white and they're sweet. And they have like every NBA team, every MLB team and every NFL team. And they have like their franchises, like most memorable plays. So I didn't look at the Blazers one, but they would have like the X's and O's probably for like Dame's big shot, like against OKC.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that you would probably like that. It's actually a freaking sick brand. I had no idea it even existed, but yeah, that's a little side note there.
For the Warriors, was it Steph's shot against OKC?
Yeah, I think it was that. And then there were the basketball plays look so interesting because sometimes it's only like one or two circles with like a line or two.
Yeah.
Because it's sometimes, but they have like Dwight Clark's catch from like the 82 NFC championship game against the Cowboys where Joe Montana threw it. Yeah. Pretty sick. There's tons of stuff. And they even have like posters too, which would look dope. But yes, sir. I think that the Warriors, it's going to be interesting. I think that but the cool thing is you're going to have like Eric coming off the bench, dude. That's a good guy to have coming off. I don't know. And then, I'm interested to see Michael Mulder because I didn't really pay attention to him.
Yeah, I'm a big Michael Mulder guy.
And you like him. And then
I actually think he should start for the Warriors this year.
Yeah. And then we've obviously, I'm brilliant to see our boy Jordan Poole, see how he does. That'll be cool. And then Smiley, who knows what he'll be.
Yeah, back in the G League, probably.
Probably. You think so? Yeah. Is Nico Mannion, I feel like I asked you this last time, will he be on the roster?
Yeah, they'll probably put him on a 2-way, would be my guess.
Yeah. That's sweet. And then we obviously still got Damian.
Yep. Yeah.
It's going to be a good team.
Yeah.
Definitely. I feel like we have more depth than last year, especially when we like when we had KD. We were kind of thin on the bench there. But now, I feel like we got a couple more assets.
Last year being hard capped was a huge burden in filling out the roster. And then this year, they obviously weren't thinking about that. The one last thing I wanted to think about for the Warriors, just an interesting storyline to follow going into the season, is what they applied for, the disabled player exception, which basically you can apply for that when you have a player who's out with a season-ending injury. And it actually has to be a legitimate season-ending injury. Like, it gets reviewed by an objective panel of NBA medical staff. And basically what it is if they decide the player's not coming back this year, which certainly will be the case with Klay Thompson, the team is granted an exception, which is worth either $9.1 million or half of the player's salary, whichever figure is smaller. And so in this case for the Warriors, it's obviously the $9.1 million. And they can use this money to either sign a player to a 1-year deal or to trade for a player on an expiring contract. So it'll just be interesting to see how the Warriors make use of this asset. I assume they're going to use it because they applied for it, but people don't always use it. So that's just something to monitor.
Bro, check this out, dog. It's called the 37-foot bye-bye shot. Look how sick that is. And it says like Paul George.
Oh, it does. That's cool.
Yeah, I'll send you a screenshot. It's pretty dope. Or I'll send you the link.
Nice.
But yeah, so yeah, dude, Klay. Imagine how good this team would have been, but we wouldn't get because like Oubre, he probably won't. He's probably a one and done.
I mean, maybe,
but he's really expensive to have on the roster though.
Sure, but I mean, but
honestly, if we're the Warriors, we might be able to afford him, especially when fans come back and stuff.
Yeah, and if you're not counting your pennies this year, like what I guess like the trade exception was sort of a one-time deal, but I mean they're in theory going to be even better next year. I mean, we'll have to see how Steph and Draymond play, but in theory they're going to take even another step forward next year. So you might as well like keep spending.
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy. I'm just so excited to watch Wiseman and his like progression over the season.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, he's definitely a guy I expect to sort of be in contention for that Rookie of the Year award.
For sure. Is what other teams kind of scored during free agency? When does it end?
So it keeps going on forever, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, like teams can even sign.
Until the trade deadline.
Yeah, even after, like then you get to the buyout market and all that stuff.
But guys will obviously be on teams by the time the season starts.
Right. Yeah. Most of the worthwhile players will be.
Yeah.
I guess the team who I really think kind of came out of the offseason as big winners are the Portland Trailblazers, who did a lot.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah, who did a lot to like bolster the wing depth. The defense in Portland was just atrocious last year. I think we were like 26th or 27th in the league. That should no longer be the case going into this next season. So just making improvements in all the areas that were sort of weak points. I just think a very smart offseason and a very well thought out allocation of resources for Neil Olshey and the Portland front office.
Yeah, Melo taking the league minimum.
Yeah, yep, the same contract.
Which I think is clutch.
I mean, it's the same contract he was on last year, and so just bringing him back was a great deal for both Portland and Melo. Theoretically, especially after listening to Neil Olshey's press conference this morning, there will be a substantial role for Melo in Portland this year. So I just think that's kind of a win-win for both sides. The thing that I loved probably the most, we already talked about the Robert Covington deal. I just think that's a huge coup for the Blazers to get a versatile team defender on the floor. Obviously, those wing defenders carry so much water in Gary Stott's drop coverage system. And so having a guy who's probably the best team defender at the wing in the NBA and Robert Covington is just going to be something that makes the Portland defense so much better.
Yeah, dude, it's going to be, the West is going to be looking kind of nice, dude. The Blazers, they're going to be an issue. If everybody stays healthy, if Nurk stays healthy, Robert Covington, absolutely fantastic addition, like we've said.
And then
Dame could have an MVP year, dude. I mean, he's been basically on the verge of being an MVP like the last 2-3 years. So, I mean.
Yeah, I think he's finished top 5 last year. So, he's definitely like one of the premier players in the league. But also when, we touched on it earlier, the absolute not meltdown. It wasn't a meltdown, but just the disaster in Boston, and the Blazers were able to benefit off of that by getting their backup center for free, basically. Like, we had a $6 million trade exception. We've talked about it on this program before, leftover from the Kent Bazemore, Trevor.
Oh, Ennis?
Yeah. And
oh, nice. Yeah, Ennis, that's awesome.
Ennis slot into that exception perfectly. And all we had to give up, and I'm using air quotes when I say give up, because really this is addition by subtraction, is we sent Mario Hezonja to Memphis, where Memphis right now is at 16 players. So you imagine Mario Hezonja is going to get cut, and probably his time in the NBA has now, will be able to probably.
Is that kind of a relief?
I mean, it's not really a relief one way or the other, because he wouldn't have played for us anyway. More than anything, I'm just happy that we were able to get a backup center, and a really high quality backup center for nothing.
Big, strong guy.
Yeah. Opportunity cost of 0 on this move by Neil Olshey. So just, well, not 0. I mean, you could have used that trade exception other places, but it's just a very smart use of the trade exception, in my opinion, which brings us to the biggest Blazer offseason signing just in terms of the price tag, Derrick Jones Jr.
Wait, when did you get him?
On the first day of free agency.
Wait, you got Derrick Jones Jr.?
Yeah.
From the Heat?
Yeah.
And we didn't know about this on our prior podcasts?
No, our last podcast was before free agency.
Bruh. That's sick. I bet Shannon's so happy. Yeah. You had him going to the Mavs, though, huh?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, I had him go to the Mavs. Good memory. But I think he'll fit good on this. Oh, well, not good. I think he'll fit well on this Blazers team, too.
That's freaking sick, dude. You guys are clutching up. Dude, you guys are kind of deep.
Oh, yeah. Probably the deepest team in the league.
Bro, and because he's big, long, and he can shoot, right?
Not the greatest shooter in the world. Something he might if he can have a semblance of respectability from beyond the arc, then this is going to be a home run signing for us. But basically the theory with Derrick Jones Jr. on the Blazers is that while Robert Covington is one of the best defenders at the wing in the NBA, he's really the most effective as a help defender, a guy who can protect the rim on rotations, best hands in the NBA, gets a ton of steals, a lot of blocks. But he's not really the guy you want to match up one-on-one against the NBA's best wings. Like, he's not going to be able to stop a Kawhi Leonard or LeBron James.
Well, who does, though?
One-on-one. Derrick Jones is actually a guy who can. He has quick feet, very long arms. He can stay in front of anybody. He's not as strong as a defender like a PJ Tucker or OG Anunoby, which is kind of his one shortcoming, but he's able to make up for that pretty well with length. So this is just going to be massive for us in the playoffs, especially if, like I said before, his shooting can come through. And taking a gamble on a guy who's 23 is not something I really expected us to do. I kind of thought we'd go after a more established player like Crowder or Millsap, and part of me still thinks that might have been the way to go, especially when you look at the kind of construct of the contract we signed Derrick Jones Jr. to. It leaves the future a little bit more in doubt than I think I would have liked it to be going into the offseason. But Derrick Jones Jr. is a super talented player. It can jump out of the gym, probably the most athletic in just terms of like a running and jumping standpoint in the NBA. So a great signing for the Blazers. And just to kind of touch base on it.
Fantastic. And if he works out, he's only 23, dude. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, and that's what I was about to get to. Like, I keep forgetting to do this. I keep forgetting to lead off with the contract. So it's 2 years, 19 million. Second year is a player option, and that's kind of what I'm worried about. Is Derrick Jones Jr. is a guy who has a ton of upside. Like,
so yeah, if he pops off, he could leave.
Right, 100%, and that's it's sort of an upside play because if he gets the shot together, if he can like play defense like we hope he can against the best wings in the NBA, he's all of a sudden going to be a very valuable player, and that will and the thing I always assume with player options is that the player is going to make the right choice. So if his second year he's going to be paid $10 million, if that's a good deal for us, he'll opt out. But if he plays poorly and that would be an overpay, he'll opt into it, and so it's kind of a lose-lose situation for us. So
yeah, but if you want to win and you're like where you're at in Portland, I mean, stay there. Because if a team's reaching for you and they're paying you a lot of money, you kind of just got to weigh like, do I want to be on another shitty team or do I want to be a team with like a freaking MVP that can carry us on our shoulders at the finals potentially, especially with how much depth we've got. You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't know if my expectations for the Blazers are at that.
I mean, bro, I think that their only thing that they've had that's been killing them is obviously injuries in depth. And I mean, they've certainly been making additions and it's completely plausible. You never know, especially with COVID, everything's crazy. Games could get postponed. I mean, crazy stuff's happened. I mean, literally no one saw the Nuggets doing what they did. You know what I mean? There's no reason why the Blazers couldn't make a playoff run.
Well, sure, but I mean, we made a playoff run in like 2019, so I think we can do that again.
Well,
I wouldn't be surprised for us.
Well, I mean, you guys had to battle your asses off just to get into the playoffs, then you're exhausted.
No, that was 2020. I'm talking about 2019.
Oh, yeah.
Finals.
You're right. But you guys got knocked out by the
eventual runners-up, the Golden State Warriors.
They got swept, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, so we did come up a little bit short that year, but I definitely think that this Blazers team is more talented.
Wait, but then you just backed up my point, though, that you guys could make it to the finals. And you just said that you don't see them getting there, but then you just said that they made a run in 2019, and I was saying they could make a run this upcoming year.
Oh, yeah. My bad. I thought you meant like as a potential championship winner, and I thought that was a little bit further than I'm willing to go at this point, but totally.
Well, you never know. I mean, if you're in the Western Conference Finals against the Warriors, and the Warriors obviously aren't the same team, but I mean, obviously the West is stacked, though. Yeah, but I think it's completely possible. Like, crazier stuff's happened, and they definitely have the pieces to make stuff work, especially with guarding big guys on the outside, because you basically you got a double upgrade from Trevor Ariza, because you got Robert Covington and now you got Derrick Jones.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
Yeah. So I guess, we'll just kind of have to wait and see how things shake out, but
it's going to be fun.
Very competitive Western Conference. What team do you want to hit on next?
Let me see, dude. I can't believe that I didn't know about. Usually I get the updates on my phone that guys get signed places. How do you know how close Marc Gasol was going to the Warriors? Or was that just like a little bit of talk?
I think it was very close. They weren't in his top three. The top three.
Just a little bit of clickbait from the journalists.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was 100% clickbait, because I do think the Warriors probably had interest in Marc Gasol. And when a team has interest in a player, then that's always within the universe of possibilities. So I just don't know how mutual that interest was.
So, do you want to go through Joe Harris's extension and then Boogie?
Yeah, let's hit Joe Harris, which actually wasn't an extension. He just was able to re-sign.
Or his re-signing thing.
Yeah, he was able to re-sign with the Nets this year. And that deal was...
Technically, it's an extension. Technically, it's an extension.
Technically, it's not.
Technically, it is because you're on the same team.
That's not.
Kind of is, though.
The extension has to come before.
Come from your same you're extending your old contract.
Yeah, but I mean, either way, Joe Harris was able to get 4 years, 70. We'll agree to disagree. Joe Harris, 4 years, $75 million with the Brooklyn Nets. This is a steep price to pay with Joe Harris, but we talk about the concept of internal leverage all the time on the show, and the Nets just had no way of replacing Joe Harris if he was going to walk. And obviously, Joe Harris is a player who fits beautifully on this Nets team. It was very important that they were able to keep him, and that's exactly what happened. So a big win for the Nets. We talked about Josiah, the Nets owner, on the show before. He saw his net worth increase by $400 million in this past week, and so he's definitely able to foot the Joe Harris bill. And so Nets did what they have to do. Pretty.
Does this affect getting a James Harden?
No, not whatsoever. They still have all the assets in place that they would need to go.
Oh yeah, because they'd be like dealing away LeVert.
Yeah, it would have to be some concoction of LeVert, Jared Allen, Taurean Prince, Rodion Cruz. I think that gets you there, and then all of the picks.
And that segues us perfectly into the Rockets, who just signed who?
DeMarcus Cousins, but I definitely think that's the headline story of this offseason, because on day one, they were able to get Christian Wood. They were able to convert that Trevor Ariza trade to the Rockets, and they were able to turn it into a sign-and trade where they got Christian Wood for 3 years, $41 million. And I was shocked by that, because I didn't really expect the Rockets to be players in free agency, let alone players spinning over the mid-level exception. And yet here we are. Color me impressed, Houston, but that great pickup for him. They desperately needed a center. I think we all knew as inventive as Daryl Morey and Mike D'Antoni's small ball system was last year. I just didn't see it being sustainable. And Christian Wood was the perfect pickup for him too, because while he is already a very solid NBA player, like I think if he had stayed in the Eastern Conference, like this may be a bit of a stretch. Maybe he could have gotten himself into some all-star talk. I don't know. That's definitely not going to be a thing in the West, but he is an improving young player. I think he's like 24 or 25. And so even if Harden and Russell Westbrook leave, this is still a great addition to the Rockets roster. He can defend the paint, stretch out, and hit the three. Just a modern center.
He's got a decent. He was almost upwards of 40% from beyond the arc, which is solid. That's what you want from a center.
And then, like you were referencing to the DeMarcus Cousins signing that came this morning, that I could really go either way on. That didn't
really do much for me. DeMarcus, he hasn't been on the court in the last 3 years, 2 years.
Yeah,
really. I mean, how many games has he probably played?
Just those games in the NBA Finals.
Yeah. Jesus. Yeah, that's not. I don't know. How much was it? A fairly good contract?
Oh, yeah, it was just a 1 year minimum. So risk. Yeah, no risk involved for the Rockets.
That's fire. I mean, that's actually kind of good, because it could end up being. It could almost serve as a little motivation for DeMarcus to have a little resurgence in his career, you know?
Yeah, maybe. What's left?
I mean, it's no risk. So, I mean.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, basically the analog here is the Blazers signing Carmelo Anthony. Like, he's a guy who I'm pretty sure everybody kind of thought he was washed up, and maybe you can reclaim a little bit of like talent. But
I don't think Boogie and Carmelo are completely different, though. Carmelo's already like solidified himself as one of the better players. And played NBA basketball, but.
And Carmelo Anthony didn't deal with nearly the injury report of a DeMarcus Cousins, which I think is the most kind of an important distinction here, but just the analog of just going after a reclamation project of a guy who at one point was one of the best players in the NBA. I don't think it'll work out. I think Cousins' career is functionally over, but you never know. Like, gamble on talent, never too bad of a move.
You never know, my guy. Because he was on the Lakers last year.
And he was on the Lakers, never played. Do you want to just go speed around through a few other teams who we thought had an interesting offseason? Or did you have a few stray DeMarcus Cousins thoughts before we keep it going?
Nope.
Let's go to their southwestern counterparts, the Dallas Mavericks, who they impressed me one of the best off seasons in my opinion.
Why? Did they get one of your favorite players, Jonah?
Two of them.
What did they get, Jonah?
They got probably the two biggest value plays in the NBA draft, in my opinion. The first one was Josh Green, who I think he pairs well with Luka Doncic in the backcourt. Great defender. You hope he can shoot, but if not, I do think the analog for him is kind of like a Kelly Oubre, like good, and not that he's a similar player, similar offensive player, just gets out in transition, like athletic, will get a lot of fast break dunks. Like Kelly Oubre, I think he will shoot threes well enough to be guarded, but I don't ever see him being too far above average. Like maybe if I guess he's playing with Luka Doncic, so he's going to be getting spoon-fed wide open threes all the time. So maybe you could see him getting up to 38 or 39% at some point in his career. But I really think the main attraction for Josh Green is defense, especially staying in front of guards. I think he can stay in front of even like the quickest point guards. He has the best hips in the draft class. Like his lateral movement to me is just so impressive. And so just a massive, massive get for the Dallas Mavericks with the 18th pick.
And then
value.
Who's the that other guy?
Yeah, so Tyrell Terry.
You might like him just a little bit.
With the 31st pick, came after the deal that sent Seth Curry to Philadelphia in exchange for Josh Richardson, and Tyrell Terry as who was it? Tim McMahon of ESPN reported Tyrell Terry is just going to be getting minutes right away, filling in for what Seth Curry's role was. And then Josh Richardson is the guy who's going to help him on defense quite a bit too. The Mavericks defense was not very good last year. So huge offseason for the Mavs, improved their defense quite a bit with the additions of Richardson and Green. Definitely defending guards is going to be an area that they're going to improve in, because Luka Doncic, although he's a creator on offense, he's more of a wing on defense. He's not very quick, but he is strong enough to guard a lot of the threes in the NBA. But then that just left the problem with who guards the point guard. And I think you answer that by bringing in Josh Richardson and Josh Green. And then the other thing that sort of surprised me was bringing back Willie Cauley-Stein, because I always kind of liked the fit of Willie Cauley-Stein on this team, especially when we saw Dwight Powell go down. You imagine he won't return this year because that injury was just pretty nasty. But Willie Cauley-Stein was a guy who I thought would fill that void. He played miserably last year, and they brought him back 2 years, $6 million.
Have a lot to work with.
Yeah, 2 years, $6 million. A lot. That was a lot to pay Willie Cauley-Stein for me, but I like it because I do still like Willie Cauley-Stein's talent.
Yeah, he's good,
and I do still like the fit in the Dallas offense. So hopefully that works out for him. I think he'll get a lot of playing time towards the beginning of the year as Kristaps recovers from his injury.
Yeah, Willie's good. He just wasn't in the best situation.
Yeah,
last year.
And then the other one last thing, they were a part of a 4-team trade with the Timberwolves, Thunder, and I think it was the Pistons. And the reporting on this was kind of shaky at first. It took us a while to kind of figure out what the exact terms were. For a while, it looked like the Mavericks were going to be getting Trevor Ariza, which I actually quite liked that fit for him. As it turned out, Trevor Ariza got rerouted to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and the Mavericks were left with James Johnson, who I don't quite like that as much, especially offensively. I do think the Mavericks, this was something that kind of was reported as soon as the postseason ended for the Mavericks, was that they were kind of looking for a tough guy enforcer on defense. Like, I think the national perception was the Clippers just kind of more a lot tougher than the Mavericks in that series, whether that matters or not, whether it's just like a media
more talented.
Yeah, I don't know. But by bringing in James Johnson, you definitely get a guy who, although he might not play tough, he'll at least act tough for you, which I think for better or for worse, that was definitely something the Mavericks were looking to add this offseason. One last thing I should add before we move on is they added Wes Iwundu on the wing. I think that was either a 1-year minimum or just above the minimum. But I don't think Wes Iwundu will play. Some people think some people like his upside just because of his athleticism and defense. I like the theory of his upside, but I just think the shot is so far away. It's hard for me to get too excited about Wes Iwundu. I don't really think he's a guy who will play a lot for him. I bet he'll even be stuck behind Josh Green in the rotation. So just kind of an addition on the margins there.
Where do you see the Mavs finishing?
So that's a good question, right? I haven't really thought too hard about it yet, but I kind of see the West in a couple of different tiers. I think you've got the 2 LA teams, far and away the 2 best teams in the conference right now. Then there's a group of 4 behind them, which is the Portland Trailblazers, the Denver Nuggets, the Utah Jazz, and the Dallas Mavericks.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got 3 teams kind of battling on the fringe of the playoffs. That's the Warriors, Suns, Rockets. I think the Rockets are kind of the inflection point there, because if Harden, Westbrook stay and are able to buy in and actually try instead of pouting, I think the Rockets are for sure a playoff team. And if Westbrook and Harden leave, obviously it's rebuild city, and they will be near the bottom of the West. The one team that I think could be a spoiler to the Warriors or the Suns and sort of steal that last playoff spot is the New Orleans Pelicans. And all that's going to depend on just how Zion looks this season. If it's the Zion we saw during the last 18 games of the pre-bubble regular season, or if it's Zion we saw in the bubble, that's going to be a massive indicator on the margins of the Western Conference playoff race.
Yeah, I agree with those tiers for sure, I think. But yeah, I don't know. When you look at the prospects, because I know how much you like Tyrell Terry, and he's going to be put on one of the better offenses in the league.
Yeah,
where do you see him kind of stacking up in terms of rookie of the year compared to the top 3 picks in the draft?
Right. It's just hard to imagine him being in that conversation. Just he won't have a ton of opportunities. Like Seth Curry, although he played an important role on Dallas, and although it's important to have those shooters, what was he averaging? Probably 8 points a game. He probably was taking less than 10 shots, probably 6 or 7 shots a game. I just think it's going to be hard for Tyrell Terry to sort of get the statistical profile of a rookie of the year candidate. Yeah. Although I still think he definitely has the potential to end up having one of the best careers out of anybody in this class. I still think he's still the second best player in this draft to me, behind LaMelo.
Do you see James Wiseman having? Do you see him getting at least probably maybe a double a game?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I can see that too.
Yeah,
but I don't know if he's going to be running up. What do you think? What do you think he'll average per game?
I think 14-10 with 2 blocks is kind of what my expectations would be. Again, I'm going to have to spend the next couple of weeks just kind of sitting down and getting a feel for what I think these teams will be like. But just based off his talent and based off my initial estimate of what his role will be in the Golden State Warriors team construct, I think 14-10, 2 blocks.
Yeah, I agree with that. What do you think LaMelo will be averaging points wise and assist wise per game?
Ooh, that's a little trickier because, like I said before, like Charlotte just has a lot going on right now, and I don't know how it's all going to shake out. If LaMelo's the lead ball handler and is being the primary creator on a majority of the starting unit possessions for the Charlotte Hornets, really, that's a tough one. Maybe 11 points, 6 assists. That's a really rough guess. I feel better about my guess for James Wiseman. But
yeah, I don't know, dude. I feel like he could have some of those weird games where it's like he gets like 8 points, but he gets like 15 assists. Do you want to talk about Rajon?
Sure, let's do it. Let's talk about the Atlanta Hawks, who still have a kind of ongoing major storyline in their free agency, which is the saga of Bogdanovic, who has had one of the most interesting journeys that any player could possibly have this offseason, from the blown up sign and trade to Milwaukee to the Pacers potentially having interest to the Hawks giving him an offer sheet worth 4 years, $72 million. And the Kings are going to have until 10:15 a.m. tomorrow morning to match that offer sheet. Reading the tea leaves, kind of my best guess is that they will not match it, and Bogdan will indeed be an Atlanta Hawk next year. But I think a really interesting kind of thing to look at in terms of his contract, 4 years, $72 million, perfectly fair price for him. I actually tend to think I'm a little higher on Bogdanovic than a lot of people around the league are. But the very interesting kind of clause on this contract to me was there, at least the thing that stood out to me that was interesting, the 15% trade kicker that gets paid by the team who trades him, which basically means if you're going to trade Bogdanovic, you're going to have to pay about $3 million.
That's trash. That sucks.
Yeah, which, I mean, functionally, it'll make him harder to trade, but not that the Hawks are going to be planning on trading him. I think that's more important if the Kings match it, which obviously is why it's included as sort of a disincentive for the Kings to match that offer sheet. So just a clever piece of business by the Hawks front office. You hardly ever see trade kickers that are that big. So just sort of an interesting little thing to look at. The other moves that the Hawks did in free agency, Danilo Gallinari was their biggest fish. 3 years to $60 million to bring Gallo to Atlanta. That one.
How long?
3 years.
They've got the money to spend though. Especially if they want to win now. Because he's not the youngest guy in the world, right?
No, at 31 years old, but he's an old 31 years old. So, yeah, I wasn't quite sure about that one. Rajon Rondo, 2 years, $14 million. Woof. That felt a little pricey to me. They got Chris Dunn, 2 years, $10 million. I actually liked that one a little more. I'm pretty sure that was the extent of it. Obviously they drafted Onyeka Okongwu with the 6th overall pick. So yeah, the message from this Atlanta Hawks team is clear. They're ready to compete right now with Trae Young. There were murmurs. I don't know how much of it was true that Trae was definitely ready to compete. And I think that could possibly be an explanation of why some of these moves.
Oh, he said he wants to?
Well, that's kind of the word around town. At least it was like.
He has that much weight. He pulls like that much weight in the franchise already.
Absolutely. Yeah. Damn. Trae Young is like, obviously he's under team control, so he doesn't have a ton of leverage yet. But you don't get a talent like Trae Young on your team like every day. And he is very, very good. I like him more than most people, but I think everybody can agree that he's going to be like an all NBA candidate this year, caliber candidate. And so, yeah,
Defensive player of the year.
What?
Defensive
Yeah.
Defensive player of the year.
He's probably not at that stage in his career yet, but I definitely think he's going to lead the NBA in assists this year and probably be top 5 in points. And by adding Gallo, by adding Rondo was important just because, as the Hawks learned the hard way last year, you need 48 minutes of competent point guard play. I don't like Rajon Rondo, especially not on a team like the Hawks. He's just terrible in the regular season. Like, even on the Lakers, he's still got that shine of a great postseason run, but he was terrible for the Lakers in the regular season. Whenever he's been on a bad team, he's kind of just packed it in and never really given 100%, which is something I'd be concerned about if I were Travis Schlenk and the Hawks.
Yeah.
But in terms of just your backup point guard, if you're getting what we saw in the playoffs, that's an awesome value for $7 million a year. That's not what you're going to be getting, to be sure. But yeah. So overall, I'm not a huge fan of the Rondo signing, but there wasn't a lot better on the market. I forget who still was available when they made that signing, but a guy like Jordan McLaughlin, I would have thrown Jordan McLaughlin an offer sheet for sure. That would have been a big get for Atlanta. But
Jeff Teague was on the Hawks.
Yeah,
and so Rajon will be replacing him.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
exactly. That's what's going to happen. Bogdanovic is going to be an interesting fit. I like Bogdanovic a lot. I think his defense gets underrated, so I think that's something you look to pair next to Trae Young for sure. And just as sort of the Hawks were one of the worst shooting teams in the league, and so Bogdan will help a lot there. And as sort of a secondary creator with the Hawks offensive unit, that'll be a big help. Gallo was the one that really kind of surprised me the most, and probably the one I understood the least. They're paying him more than Davis Bertans is getting paid, which I would have rather had Davis Bertans, to be honest. Sort of fits the Hawks timeline a lot. Like I said, Gallo was old for 31, and I definitely think that's true. Like, he's already losing a lot of athleticism, and you expect that will continue. It's gonna make the Hawks are gonna probably have one of the best offenses in the NBA. Like, Gallo can shoot a lot. He still can do a little bit off the bounce, even if he's not the amazing finisher at the rim he once was. He still is crafty, shoots a lot of free throws. So he's gonna help out the Hawks offense that way. I just think I would have kept my powder dry if I were them, because Atlanta, in theory, could have had spending power next off season too. And so maybe give Danilo Gallinari a 1 year, $25 million deal. And if he plays well, you re-sign him next year. Certainly that non-bird right that would have allowed you to make him an offer worth 120% of his $25 million salary. Certainly that would have been enough to bring him back. But instead, you basically commit to having Danilo Gallinari on your team for the foreseeable future. Like, by the time this contract is up for Danilo Gallinari, Trae Young will be properly paid. And so, yeah, by the time Danilo Gallinari's contract's over, you'll have no means of replacing him. So you better hope for the Hawks that Danilo works out.
Yeah.
I tend to think he will this year. I do think the Hawks, as of now, are probably the 8th seed in the East. So if making the playoffs was that important to Atlanta, well, then good job. I think this takes them a long way in that direction. But if your goal is just building a sustainable contender built around Trae Young, I think this was a step in the wrong direction.
Yeah. And so Bogdan is most likely going to be a Hawk.
Yeah, I would put it at like 80%. He joins the Hawks. 20% the Kings match the offer sheet.
All right. So what's their roster looking like?
So point guards,
25.
You've got Trae Young, Rajon Rondo, Chris Dunn. Shooting guards, you've got Bogdanovic, and you've got Kevin Huerter. Small forwards, Cam Reddish, maybe DeAndre Hunter plays there a little bit. Power forwards, Gallinari, John Collins, and then centers, Capella and Onyeka Okongwu. Am I forgetting anybody? I don't think I'm forgetting anybody important, at least.
No. So small forwards probably their weaker spot.
Yeah, I would think so.
Because it sounds decently good.
Yeah, and I do think that they'll contend for the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference, possibly even the 7th seed. I still haven't thought too hard about what I think the teams will be like. Obviously, I've said that a million times, but I think the Pacers could potentially take a step back. But I think as of now, my initial projection would be that the Hawks finished 8th in the East.
Okay. Yeah. And so what other ones didn't what's that one guy's name that you're just talking about that you would rather have the Hawks have?
Oh, Jordan McLaughlin.
No, it's like
Bertans. Yep.
Didn't he get re-signed?
Yep, he re-upped in Washington, 5 years, $80 million.
Okay.
A lot of people are hating on that contract. I actually tend to think that's decent value for the Wizards. I think making just over $15 million, that's $16 million, will make him a very tradable asset should the Wizards decide to go in that direction, which I don't think they necessarily will. I think they are still trying to win for as long as Wall and Beal are on the team. I think what people were the most concerned about is locking a guy who's injury prone like Bertans, locking him down for 5 years, which that's perfectly fair. It always is a risk to sign a guy that long when he has dealt with injuries in the past. But there are very few players like Bertans who are like 6'8", 6'9", and can shoot above 40% from three, especially taking the shots that Davis Bertans takes. He takes a lot off movement, off screens, some from 4 to 5 feet beyond the arc. So I just think the archetype of Davis Bertans is so valuable that you do pay up to bring that guy back. And I think it would ease a lot of people's minds to know that the 5th year on that contract is in fact non-guaranteed at $5 million. And the trigger for that is playing 75% of the games in the 4th year of the contract. So if for some reason he gets injured and plays less than 75% of the games, and what would it be? 2024, 2025, I think my math is right. No, it would be 2023, 2024. Yep, 2023, 2024. If he plays less than 75% of the games in that season, the last year becomes non-guaranteed. So just a slight amount of protection for Washington there.
Wow, dude. There's so much more that goes behind in a contract than what's like depicted sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, the depiction is always what's most sort of flattering to the players, like, because the agents are the ones who like feed the stories to Wojnarowski and Sharania, and so the agents are always gonna like report the maximum amount of dollars and include like all the unlikely incentives and all the like non-guaranteed amounts of money. So it usually is a little bit less than like what you see on like ESPN or whatever.
Yeah, how did like Woj get to where he's at?
Oh, I don't know.
Like, it's so interesting to me that now there's like ESPN, MMA guys, and like these guys, they're like, and Adam Schefter, like they're the first ones to know everything. It's so cool.
Yeah,
it's so interesting. But yeah, is there any other landing spots for guys? We'll just kind of have to wait. It's basically how many more main guys are there?
Yeah, so here, let me get the list out. It's kind of, you're kind of getting to the end of the road right now. It's kind of, the free agent market is starting to look a little bit barren. The way I sort of think about free agency is like, it's musical chairs, and you don't want to be like the last guy standing up when the music stops playing and people are out of money. So right now, point guards, the best guys on the market are Shabazz Napier, Reggie Jackson, Tyler Johnson. For shooting guards, you've got Langston Galloway just got signed by the Suns today. That's not right. Wayne Ellington, Kyle Korver, Jordan McRae. Not a lot there. Glenn Robinson III, Wilson Chandler, Nick Batum still available at small forward. I actually think Glenn Robinson is a guy who'd be able to help out a lot of teams. And then obviously you've still got Brandon Ingram, who will, in all likelihood, 99% sure, be going back to the New Orleans Pelicans. Same deal for Anthony Davis, technically still on the market. Functionally, everybody knows he's going to be wearing a Lakers uniform next year. You still got Jared Dudley, still got Rondé Hollis-Jefferson. Hollis-Jefferson is a guy who I would definitely expect to be going, or I guess going to Tampa Bay, staying with the Raptors. Centers, you've got Hassan Whiteside of the Portland Trailblazers. I have a theory about where he's going to go. We're going to have to wait to see how that plays out. Dwayne Dedman still on the market, and then Taj Gibson as well, as John Henson.
I think that Shabazz Napier needs to get picked up, bro.
I agree. I think he's a guy who gets very underrated, but I definitely think there are a lot of teams who could benefit from what he brings to the table.
And like you said, GR3 is good.
Yeah, absolutely. Glenn Robinson.
He did nothing but good things on the Warriors that I remember.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me at all why he's still on the market.
Bring him back, dude. Why not?
The Warriors. Oh, I would be all for that if I were Golden State. And they certainly have the money to do it if they want to. So I would definitely look into it.
Yeah, I like him a lot. It's going to be a fun season, dude. It's going to be really interesting. I've got to watch the Warriors every single night, bro, because then I'll start learning about the other teams based on who we play. And then I'm just slowly soaking up the NBA like a sponge.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that.
Yes, sir. It's going to be, I'm pumped. So, everything is going to be like, I should know this, but the situation, you're going to be playing in your stadium just with no fans, or what the Warriors are doing, they're going to do testing their fans.
Yeah, and I think there are a few teams that in theory are going to be allowed to have a limited amount of fans, but I don't really know which teams those are or whether those teams will act on their ability to have fans. I mean, I still think that seems extremely irresponsible given the state of where we are as a country.
I 110% agree.
Yeah.
Like seeing fans at the Buccaneers Rams game, it's just like, why? Why do you need to be there right now?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, who knows?
We're in a hot mess, but hopefully it gets better soon. You never know. We got a vaccine coming. Dude, it's so weird. Like, I remember talking to you when we were like playing golf and we're just like guesstimating what's going to happen in the future. And like now we're here and it seems like zero things have changed.
Yeah, it's gotten way worse.
Crazy. My dad gave this to me. Who would have thought that a plastic tee can be so useful instead of busting through 40 wood ones in like one round?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the plastic tees are a godsend. I never used the wood ones. No.
Yes. Do you like brush tees?
What?
Sorry. Do you like the brush tees?
Which ones are those?
The ones with the bristles at the top.
Oh, I don't think I've ever used one of those before.
Oh, really?
No.
I don't really like them. They're kind of weird because the ball always falls off. But yes, thank you, Jonah, for doing this. This was fun.
And we're going to have to come back later this week with our first episode of Team Previews, which I think will be very fun.
Do you want to say who you want to do? Do you have an idea?
Sure. I was thinking what we could do is just kind of go division by division. So do like the Pacific Northwest Division or the Pacific Division or
there isn't. That's not a real thing though, right?
What?
It's just the East and the West, right?
No, those are the two conferences. And then in the West.
Oh, dude.
In the West, you've got the Northwest, the Pacific, and the Southwest. In the East, you've got the
no
Midwest.
Freaking way.
What?
Are you kidding me?
No.
What? That's a legit thing.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
I feel like I knew this low key, but I never have thought about the NBA in standings wise, like in your division. I always think of it as 15 and 15.
I mean, that's really all that matters. The division
Like
is
you don't, I've never heard like the Warriors are divisional champions.
Yeah, the Warriors are in the same division as the Kings, Suns, Lakers, and Clippers, but it's the only.
But where our main rivals are the Blazers,
Really?
right?
I don't.
Guys, I wouldn't say the Kings are our rivals.
I don't know. I don't really think the Warriors have any like crazy rivals. If anything, like the Rockets, I would say are kind of.
I feel like the Blazers Warriors games are sick.
Yeah, I mean,
I feel like that's the most rivalry. That's what I feel.
the Blazers kind of have rivalries with all those kind of California teams, just because Portlanders are kind of bitter that all those people transplant out from like the Bay or from LA to Portland, and so there's just kind of like that tension that already exists, which is kind of stupid. But I think that's kind of the reason.
Just like you never hear like the Warriors won the Pacific division.
Yeah, the only reason like divisions exist are just for like scheduling purposes.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So
that's
like
so interesting. You learn something new every day.
Yeah, so I guess back to like which teams we're going to talk about. I kind of wanted to talk about teams where it definitely felt like their off seasons wrapped up. So I guess can I just get back to you after I kind of look at after we learn some more tomorrow about what's going down in free agency?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. What day do you want to do NFL on this week? Friday again?
I think Friday's good. Thursday, something's going on Thursday. I don't remember.
Okay. So do you want to do NBA on either Saturday, Tuesday, or Wednesday?
Yeah. Do you just want to do it Wednesday night?
Cool. Yeah.
What's on Thursday again?
Oh, Thanksgiving.
I'm just kidding. Can't wait, boys. The Ravens going to the Steelers. Gonna be a ball game.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir.
That is
I hate the Steelers, dude.
You do? Why?
Because it's just like...
Because they have so many bandwagon fans?
I feel like that's a thing. Like, I feel like there's a lot of bandwagon Steeler fans.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And Chiefs fans that just come out of nowhere. It's very frustrating.
Did it really come out of nowhere, or did they win a certain prestigious...
No, as soon as Patrick Mahomes plays his first game and pops off, it's like, I'm a Chiefs fan. You know what I mean? No, but yeah, it does help that they won the bowl, the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I feel really stupid because I almost was a part of the Lamar Jackson bandwagon before like the Lamar Jackson bandwagon was a thing.
I was a proponent for Lamar Jackson as soon as he got drafted.
Yeah, I remember in like Madden 19, I would always sub out Joe Flacco and put in Lamar Jackson as the starter, and that's how I learned he existed. And he was like my favorite player to use, and then all of a sudden he became really popular.
No, dude, that's what I'm saying. He I would tell all my friends, I'm like, Lamar Jackson's gonna pop off, dude. And people gave him a bad rap because his rookie year. They stuck him in the playoffs, and the Chargers were raw that year. And he still managed to come back a little bit in that. I think it was like the AFC divisional game or something. But he's a stud, man. But Taysom Hill had himself a day. He can throw a little bit.
Yeah, I mean those BYU quarterbacks, and then Zach Wilson.
There's a bunch of memes that are like Taysom Hill is what Lamar Jackson wishes to be or whatever.
That's cool.
Because he actually completes passes 15 yards down the field. Lamar Jackson completes like I think it's like 38% of his passes from like 15 plus yards. Jared said that last time, which is not good.
Huh.
But Justin Herbert, dude, rookie of the year.
Yeah, now that Joe Burrow's hurt, who else are they going to really give it to?
Let me think.
Justin's got to be running away with it at this point.
Dude, is Chase Claypool a rookie?
I have no idea.
Let me look this up really fast because I want to say that he might be. And if he is, Wait, when was Chase Claypool drafted? I'll cut this out. When was Claypool draft? Oh yeah, he's 2020. That man's is kind of on fire. He's kind of a beast. He could be a rookie of the year candidate, but you can't put him over Justin Herbert, especially if he takes him into the playoffs. And I really like the AFC West though, because the Raiders played the Chiefs well.
Yeah, they beat them the first time, right?
Beat them the first time, and then they lost 31-34 or something like that last night.
Could have easily won though last night for sure.
Did you watch it?
Yeah, and Casey had that like last minute drive to win.
Dang, yeah, I didn't watch it because I was literally doing homework all night. But yeah, was it a pretty decent game?
Yeah, I only watched the fourth quarter, but the fourth quarter was very exciting, and Las Vegas definitely should have won.
Tom Brady showed his age a little bit tonight, dude. He was throwing some ill-advised balls.
Did LA win?
Mm-hmm. Which is awesome. The Niners are gonna have a tough comeback, but at least they're getting their starting running back and wide receiver back, which is massive.
Are the Niners like at all on the fringe of playoffs right now?
Oh, what are we? 4-6?
Oh,
4-7, 4-6.
Yeah, so not.
4-6, I believe.
Are there going to be 16 games this year, like usual?
Mm-hmm. No, we're solid. We have to go 5-1. But here's the fantastic thing is we beat the Rams already, and the Rams beat the Seahawks, and I believe they beat the Seahawks and they beat the Buccaneers, who are like one of the better NFC. Who did the Buccaneers beat, dude? I forget. My NFL math's off right now. Sorry, I'll let you go, dude.
Okay.
Thank you for coming on. This was fun.
You. Yeah, it was fun. See you on Wednesday.
All right, bye.
Bye. I'll let you know what teams we're gonna do too.
Sounds good.
All right. See you, Kellan.
See ya.